Developing thinking skills, that was one of my major concerns.
If our thinking isn't governing our behavior, somebody else's thinking is.
To have our children be thinkers.
It's a life skill.
We're not hitting on the key factor that college teachers want us to learn, and that is how to think.
What we learn in school is not as important as how we approach learning.
If you can teach them how to educate themselves, how to learn what they need to learn,
then someone can give you a book on something you've never heard of and you can actually learn it.
Education is life. It's what you do day in and day out, whether you're studying in a book or experiencing something else.
It's not something that you do in a separate section of your life.
A professional teaching a large group of young people all the same age.
It doesn't make sense. We don't live our lives in age segregation.
what is someone else's child going to teach your child about how to respond that you can't teach them?
In all of the traditional education that I've been involved with, there was never a class for character development.
Learning the facts that you learn in school is really not the biggest part of education, in my opinion.
If I'm not the major person involved in my child's life, how can I model what Christ looks like?
What do you want from your child? Do you want them to be a professional? Do you want them to be a well-rounded? Do you want them to work for the Lord? What are you going to do when they're little to give them that goal, that desire?
This child's soul is on the line. This child's character and his livelihood and his future. We're forming a little human being here by our actions or lack thereof.
And if we develop a child that can think, and think well, and think clearly, they will be the head, no matter what. And they will be not followers, but they will be leaders, and leaders in the right direction. Developing thinking skills, that was one of my major concerns, because if you don't think for yourself, somebody else will be thinking for you, and you'll be a follower.
If our thinking isn't governing our behavior, somebody else's thinking is.
To have our children be thinkers, not mere reflectors of other men's thoughts, is a huge priority for us.
Developing thinking that's exactly what we have to do, because at some point in time, children grow up, even though we don't want them to, and then they have to make the decisions that we made. We hope that's our goal in teaching them.
We want them to learn to think since they were very small.
Cause and effect. I always wanted my kids to know, if you do this, this happens.
Rationalizing from cause to effect, is this really worth it? Is it doing me good? Is it doing me harm?
I want to make sure they understand that everything has a cause.
Independent thinking is such a critical life skill.
Thinking is very important because it governs our behavior.
Being able to think on your own and to decide things for yourself without depending on someone else's opinion is a very important thing to be able to do.
It's very important to analyze who's doing the thinking for you and learn to think for yourself, so you're not merely reflecting other people's thoughts.
Really, if it's under God's authority, and we don't say, we start questioning the law of God or something, but we truly examine claims, we think for ourselves, we don't become gullible, we have the reasoning abilities to discern truth from error so that we're not deceived. That's essential for young people to learn.
It's a life skill. It is what we do in life. It's what, frankly, makes us excel in life, is the ability to analyze a situation and come up with creative solutions to that.
Because it's that spontaneous generation of thinking that God has given us. It's a wonderful thing to think that you can create You know, he gave us that creation ability to think of something, and that's being lost because everybody's like programmed. This is what you learn, and you churn it in and churn it out, you know, and we want people to come up with ideas. Otherwise, you know, as a country, we relished ideas. That's how we grew as a country in America, even though I'm English. But the history of America is based on spontaneous ideas coming forward. So we have to let children think, read books, study things, come up with ideas that someone hasn't told you, here's the answer, just remember it and tell me it tomorrow. It's think of something, and that's tough.
I was talking with a college professor once, and they had an interesting perspective on preparation. They told me, as a fellow teacher, teaching junior high school, they told me if the students who come to me knew very little but how to think, I could teach them everything I need them to know in my subject.
If you can teach them how to educate themselves, how to learn what they need to learn, then you've prepared them for any learning that they might need at any point in time in their life.
And if you look at this traditional curriculum, we have these cycles in mathematics, cycles in language arts, cycles that really add a little bit each year, but there's a tremendous amount of repetition. But in those cycles, we're not hitting on the key factor that college teachers want us to learn, and that is how to think.
You have a lecture, you have a test, and then you have a final exam. Now, the purpose of learning in a school setting, maybe not consciously, but effectively becomes passing the test. And you can't have the same degree of learning in that. You can't have the same degree of incorporation.
You learn a new concept, you know, you grasp a new truth, and then you have to practice it, you have to own it, and it takes a while. And it's not like, you know, well, you learn this one, you do a test like next week, and then we go for the next thing. And that's not how it works. And it's the same way in life, in school, in every stage.
In real life, I mean, outside of the scholastic experience, you don't have a set sequence of rules and steps to take to solve a problem. The real genius of the geniuses, of the people who are successful in life, is that they can find a problem and find a solution. Not an answer, but a way to solve the problem. And I think that this problem-solving method is the greatest asset I've gained from my homeschooling experience.
What we learn in school is not as important as how we approach learning. So then later on in life, when you're older, and you had the right background in thinking and education as an idea, then someone can give you a book on something you've never heard of, and you can actually learn it.
They really want to know things, not just to be superficial. And I think that will carry in their spiritual life. I know it is. Because if you learn to just skim, let it be reading romance or literature or even studying school, but just the superficial way to do it, you lose the depth of learning and the connection with the Bible and with the holy writings. It's much superficial. And learning at home that you carry everything to other aspects of life helps with the spiritual too.
God wants us to be able to follow Him and not the world. And the world always, always, always bombards us with their opinion of things, the way that they think that things should be done. And if we don't have a strong will and a strong independent thought process, then we aren't going to think through why not to go with the flow.
Analyzing my growing up years, I realized that the school experience, for the most important things in life, was really not a positive experience. And when I say most important things in life, I mean character development, learning the facts that you learn in school is really not the biggest part of education, in my opinion.
In all of the traditional education that I've been involved with, there was never a class for character development. There's simply not room for that in the traditional arithmetic or science or humanities. It's not an aspect in the domain of traditional learned material, but one that homeschooling can actually focus on.
I think that one of my goals for homeschooling was to help Lizzie at an early age determine that she wanted to follow Christ. And whatever I needed to do to help that in her walk or her decision making. And so sometimes I think we did more in that, and then we did our schooling. If there were character issues, we spent more time working with that than we did with the lessons that day.
I think the biggest part of schooling at home is to build that character. I mean, in school we put academics is the focus, but at home, character is the focus.
I feel as Christians, character development is so important because Christ asked us to be like Him. And if I'm not the major person involved in my child's life, how can I model what Christ looks like?
In reading, you learn a lot of things about how to form the character of a child. And sort of you have to be there to form the character of the child. And, for a while when she was little, we lived around Lansing area. And I remember one day we were driving along and talking about how much time it took to homeschool and the costs of homeschooling and Susan staying home and not working. And we were driving past a public school. And I looked across into the playground of the public school, and there was a little boy grabbing another little boy, smashing his head against the floor. And it was really quite an interesting moment to think of why we homeschooled and didn't want that to be something that was part of our child's life.
Yeah, I knew I wanted to homeschool our children. Just partly because of my own experiences in school. Even though I grew up in the church and went to church schools all my life, I knew that I was exposed to influences in school that were not beneficial to me in my life, and I wanted to avoid that.
I think by and large we have great teachers. And if we had a horrible teacher, there's a mechanism for having that teacher removed or dealt with. But it's not the teachers that kids by and large learn from, it's their peers. And if the child next to them isn't the influence that I want, I really can't do much about that as a parent. So since their primary education comes from their peers, and I can't do anything about their peers, then I'm in a trap. My kids are stuck in an environment that I don't want them learning in.
Your kids can be in a classroom with exceptional teachers, but they're with classmates that are poor influences on them, and you can't do anything about that. Then you're backpedaling really when you're parenting at home, trying to get them to stop saying, poor choice of words or behavior that's inappropriate.
There's a lot that parents and teachers don't know about that takes place in school settings. We say that we know about it. We know that it happens, but we, just like most bad things in life, we don't think it's going to happen to me or to my child, but it does.
Competition is the rule of the day. One-upping each other, making fun of each other. I'm going to beat you. I'm better than you. I got this grade. These are the smarter kids. These are the dumber kids. And all of these, whether it's the sports or the academic grades and all, or just the social dynamics of who's cooler, who's prettier, who's funnier. These things tend to take hold, and competitiveness is not a virtue and value of Jesus Christ.
This constant peer environment, it suppresses their individuality. It suppresses their creativity sometimes. It suppresses their God-given abilities because if it's not accepted from the group, then they don't want it to come out.
If I don't do what they want me to do, I will be rejected. So the fear of rejection among your peers, it is very strong, but it's learned.
When Lizzie was 5, and we put her in kindergarten so that I could work more. And we noticed partway through that she was more interested in pleasing the little girls at school than she was in mom and daddy anymore.
It's affecting their self-image, and it's affecting their value of themselves and where they get their value. As human beings, our value can only, true value as a human being can only come as we learn to relate to our Creator. He's the one that gives us value. Without a relationship with Christ, we have no value, really. And so by having these young people start getting value from who likes them, who thinks they're cute, who has a crush on them, it's weaning, it's teaching us to depend on a crutch, a human crutch. Jeremiah says the arm of flesh will fail you, and it does.
The idea of age segregation in education, I don't think is very helpful, because it produces an environment where you're raised or taught true values by your peers instead of significant interactions with adults who have a more balanced or mature perspective on how those interrelationships should be formed.
What is someone else's child going to teach your child about how to respond that you can't teach them?
One of the reasons we've decided to keep our children at home is socialization. We believe that it's important, that children need to learn how to interact with people of all ages, that they need to especially have that important bond with mom and dad, that secure attachment is needed in order for them to have the confidence to be able to engage socially in a positive way. And so I believe that a lot of the ways the world does it, or education, academic education coming in too early, age segregation, these things actually hinder good socialization.
If good socialization is demonstrated by gang behavior and group behavior where people get pulled by one strong member to do lots of bad things, then I say my children are not socialized in that way.
Because if you are just interacting with children at your own age, you lose, this capacity, or it's not as well developed as if you are interacting with people of all ages.
I see socialization as being able to go and talk to somebody of whatever level in life they are, from a child, a child's age up to an adult. Can you say hello? Can you be polite? Can you interact? Can you play?
In a setting where all the children are about the same age, they learn to interact just with children the same age.
The fact that kids can talk to kids doesn't necessarily help in life, because where I work, I don't think there's anyone my age. So strangely enough, the fact that I grew up in a school classroom with 27 kids my age hasn't helped me in the slightest. I deal with people 20 years older than me and 20 years younger than me and have to learn how to talk to them.
Certainly there are benefits to having all the different age groups together. It's a much richer learning experience. So having, it reinforces in ways that different age brains think differently, and it's quite interesting, quite exciting to see the ways that they learn. And they can teach each other, that's certainly part of it, but they learn differently.
The other thing that I find in learning that is a key for children remembering what you want them to learn is giving them experiences where they're with a mentor, and sometimes it's just an older child and sometimes it's with other grown-ups. But the best learning is having that mentor, basically apprentice your child. And again, you're not going to run into those occasions in the traditional classroom very often where they have that one-on-one experience with mentors.
There's a lot of emphasis on, a professional teaching a large group of young people all the same age. We see this in church groups, in traditional education, And I have just really valued the opportunities of having a wide age group interact, predominantly adults.
It doesn't make sense. We don't live our lives in age segregation.
They're actually benefited more, I believe, by caring adults who are interested in them and interested in their maturing process.
If we could actually listen to some of the older generation and learn from them, we'd learn a lot.
I want my kids to be the best that they can be and have as many advantages as they can. The type of character development that they get will result in how they see God. And, you know, their peers will have some effect on that. And I want them to have the best exposure to God that they can have.
So a lot of people argue that going to a good school and having good Christian friends is adequate. It helps you to have a good spiritual life. But God made the family to be a unit, to work together, to build each other up, and to always be there for each other. And when you have, 6 to 8 hours of your life out at a different place without the rest of your family, then you don't have that tight-knit relationship that God designed. And so homeschooling really offers way more time, way more investment than you could get in any other situation.
My mom is always there for me. She's there for my schooling, and she's also there for other areas of life. When I'm going through a rough time, I can talk to her about anything, And I think that's how God planned it to be, where your family is your best friends. They're the ones that you're always there with, and you really cherish the time you have with them.
I definitely believe that family is the best environment for building character, even though as parents we rarely feel like we're giving our children the best because we're learning and growing ourselves.
The better relationship they have with me, I think the more likely they are to take what I have to say on face value, rather than to go and experiment with areas that they later will regret.
The way children learn to relate to other children is if they have that value and that security within themselves, which doesn't come from other children, it comes at home.
The most important social bond is with the parents. And that's going to be the basis for not only all intellectual learning in the future, but the confidence to engage socially with people of all ages and in all circumstances. If the child doesn't have a strong, healthy bond, especially with his mother, during those first 8 years, then they're going to grow up more insecure, and they're going to be less likely to be socially adjusted well.
The important thing is that a young person has the confidence that comes from knowing that I'm an important person. The way they learn that when they're young is I'm important to mom and dad. And as they get older, hopefully, that transfers. I'm important because I'm important to God.
One of the factors of teaching young people to think involves simply doing things in real life instead of sitting back and being a spectator of media.
Our children have never seen any sort of entertainment media. It's just not a part of our home. We believe strongly in the statement that says the more free from artificial excitements and the more in harmony with nature, the better it is for the development of that child, morally, spiritually, intellectually. And so if we truly believe in that statement, then why would we be giving them all of this fast-paced, high-intensity media, especially now that we know what the research is showing, that it increases attention problems later in life, that it has mesmeric effects, frontal lobe suppressing effects, limbic system enhancing, and so that's a no-brainer. Once you see what the effects of these media are, why would I subject my children to any of that?
We did have TV and videos that the kids watched, and what I noticed happening in our home is, especially if they had that exposure in the morning, that they were not as willing to go back to school or to do their chores. They're also more irritable with each other, because when you sit around and do lazy things where you're just watching, you're thinking about yourself and your comfort and your interest levels and not thinking about the person next to you. So if that goes away, then your first reaction to anything at home is to argue back or be ornery. And I found the days that we didn't have any TV in the house, that the kids were nicer to each other. I mean, that was easy to see right away.
We're not on Facebook, we don't Twitter, we don't do, what's that other one with the Instagram? Because the more you do that, the more you're absorbed in it, the more you're checked out of what you're supposed to be doing right now. And when you get together with your friends, you can share those things that you did or saw or whatever, but you don't have to all day have this barrage of information coming at you that you have to sort out, that you have to decide where it goes in your in your filing system. You can concentrate on what you're doing here.
Having this constant contact, that's socialization taken to the extreme. And it's not healthy, I don't think. This idea that I need to always be somehow in touch with my friends. It's not real. In real life, you're not always with your friends. You actually have things that you're doing that are in front of your face, and you have to focus on them and do them. And to have friends or whatever it is constantly having the avenue to distract you from whatever it is that's real in front of you that you're trying to accomplish, or you should be trying to accomplish, is detrimental.
I think it really deviates from the important things in the real relationships.
Not only the media, but like many times our devices, by just going to the calculator and doing something instead of actually thinking for yourself. And between I have these two decisions, let me go see what my friend says, it usually goes on your device, or then chatting with your friend instead of talking to the friend right next to you. Just different things. It does make you think superficially and not go deeply and study the thing for yourself. And also, many times you have your device here and your book that you're studying here, and then that many times, somebody sent a message, let me just check. And most of the time you'll be there chatting and your book is open and you're not doing really anything.
The argument that we're going to have a great home education curriculum with lots of good educational media. Well, the research has shown zero evidence that any so-called educational media is going to improve learning at all. In fact, there's an interesting study that was just done in Israel where they had people read text from a book, a paper book, and then they had them read that exact same text, a control group, read that exact same text off a screen. And guess who had better reading comprehension? Those who read it out of a book. Same text, you have greater comprehension out of a book. So this whole idea that we should bring everything into the screen world it's not borne out in the research. And sure, there are some convenience factors, and we have the internet and we use it as adults. But to have the child have that as his main mode of education and learning, it's not research-based, and it will open up the doors to so many other problems.
Anytime you have information presented to you already baked, you don't have to engage your mind. Like I said already, some children are going to understand and receive that more readily than others, but whether they're receiving it readily or not doesn't really engage the reasoning processes. Okay, it's something that's already done for you. Reasoning and creativity, which I think kind of are pretty closely related to one another, happen with things that you're doing yourself. It's not so much with things that somebody else is doing or that you're watching someone else do.
There absolutely is a multi-million-dollar industry out there selling us on the idea that educational media is very important for children. You got your Leapfrog and you got your Baby Einstein, and without these, your children will be behind and they won't be catching up in school. It couldn't be further from the truth. Not only is there no research sustaining these claims, but actually some of these media have been shown to be harmful for the developing brain. You look at Dr. Dimitri Christakis' research, and the verdict is in. These things are at best neutral and by and large harmful.
You know, media is delivered in ways that are damaging to the brain, even though you're not aware of it.
From the researches that relate to the child development with watching TV, we understand that when a child is watching TV, it's so passive, and that reduces so much their learning.
That's the fear of media. You just are checked out, and you're allowing whatever is on that to just come right in. And we need to protect our children from those influences, because most of the time those are not good influences, especially if it's just the secular media that you're allowing in.
God wants us to have pure minds and pure hearts, and media makes it hard for that to happen.
With the younger ones, they don't have iPhones or iPods or computers, anything like that. It's just we don't feel that they're ready for that. They don't need it. They have other forms of entertainment. They're outside in nature. They're, playing with the animals that we have. And if they're on these devices, it just kills any desire for the good things that they need to be exposed to help them develop.
It's more interesting to actually do things like hands-on than watch something on a TV. It's just, I don't know, you don't really get anything when you're watching from a TV than you would. You don't get as much than you would if you actually did something.
Why not go and talk to people who are nurses and photographers and doctors and whatever we want to be, and find out what it's like for real instead of just sitting in front of a TV and watching.
Education is life. It's what you do day in and day out, whether you're studying in a book or experiencing something else. And so to be home educators of our children just means to guide them through life as God designed it. And it's not so much an academic study as it is some academics, some physical, some emotional, spiritual, practical. All of the elements of the human experience come into play when you ask what is home education all about.
Learning is what we do our whole lives. It's not something that you do in a separate section of your life. And learning is to practice. It's an enjoyment. In school, a lot of times you learn to answer a question, to do a test, but at home they are curious. They want to know how does this work, and they go after it. They go for books if needed. They go asking people. Christopher loves observing. He had this opportunity since he was small, so he goes and he says, my parsley is not doing too well. How should I work on it? And he goes and he experiments, and he plants one in one place, another in another place, and he does his scientific, methods. And it's not because he learned the scientific method. It's because he wants to know what works best. And in every aspect of their lives, they have this practical view, and they love learning.
The focus generally these days in an academic setting is to learn academic skills, and we can define those, by topic like math or language arts or history. And the school, the way they're set up, a lot of the learning is just memorization, and the information really goes in a child's ear and goes out the other unless it's presented to them in a meaningful way. Then it'll be retained longer. In the homeschool setting, you can cater to your kids' interests and then set up learning environments or occasions that make the connection easier with the material that they're trying to remember, and how they can apply that.
Learning is life, and I don't want them thinking that, I'm already done with school now, I don't have to learn anymore. It's not a have to, it's I get to. And I want lifelong learners. I want the kids thinking about stuff and exploring stuff for the rest of their lives.
I think that natural curiosity is something that God has given to us that's supposed to last all of our lifetimes. And I've found that in my own students, many of them, there's just, it's almost as if their curiosity has been killed somehow. And they come to life just with a apathetic approach, no interest in things in this world that God has made, which is there are endless things to explore and learn, and skills and people and cultures and truths about God. And I never want that to diminish in my children. I want them to always be lifelong learners, always be curious to learn what is the next thing God has in store for me.
I wanted our kids to love learning for a lifetime. I mean, that is life. And homeschooling made it really fun.
There was a point in time when one of our children was struggling in math, and we just felt that the book was putting too much pressure on them, so we actually put the book away for the better part of that year and gave them certain practical projects to do. I do engineering type work, and we have an interest in woodworking, so we gave them actually we let them choose the projects, didn't we, what they wanted to build. But they couldn't build it until they had drawn the plans for it and dimensioned them and drawn it all up. And so we did that. And there was actually quite a bit of learning that took place there. You get a good, in the same way that you can learn fractions in the kitchen, you can learn fractions on a tape measure too. And so we learned quite a bit there. And then when we came back to the book, I think the learning was improved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing I noticed was when he was, he struggled with certain fractions in the book, but we put him in the shop and he had to measure, it was just natural. He could do it because he could apply that, he could see, it was practical to him and he had no problem with it.
School was created just because the home failed. The parents were supposed to be the teachers, and they would apprenticeship at home to life. That's the original idea. But because the home failed, the Lord had to institute the schools. The schools are artificial. They are not the natural way to learn. You place the children there to try to teach them the things from the life. So they have the little fake money instead of the real money. They have everything is kind of trying to put the practical in a theoretical way, when at home you have it all. You don't have to do all that. You don't have to teach them how to measure or and supposedly give them theoretical problems, for them to try to solve, because in the day-to-day life, the problems are there. You just bring it up. So I heard parents saying, I'm the teacher, the husband is the principal, and the children are the students. That's trying to bring the home there. Or the children have to sit down and we have a school room that is separate. I don't have anything against it, but the whole house, the whole yard, the whole world is our school room. So we are trying to do the opposite. The school is trying to imitate life or to teach life in a little room. We don't have to do that. We have the world.
We do have that sort of struggle. We think, what do we need to teach them academically so that they can be prepared well according to, quote, the normal standards? So we do want to do that too. But that, for me, is such a smaller part of the education.
There's so much more than learning math and spelling and reading. There's so much more to life. There's so much more quality that we're trying to get our kids exposed to.
Really, it's more life education. Obviously the academic is an important part of it, but there's so many other things that are important in life than that, and not to downplay that at all, because that is obviously very important. But there are, like we already talked about a little bit, character is huge, and that's more important than academics.
Learning the facts that you learn in school is really not the biggest part of education, in my opinion. Most of the knowledge that you learn, at least through the primary grades, through the first 8 grades and even through high school, the vast amount of that knowledge, it becomes kind of a pool of thought, I think, maybe, but you lose a large percentage of it. If we can teach our children how to learn versus teaching them just this set of concepts and set of facts, then they're prepared.
For Bethany, we do math and things like that, but we'll go into the kitchen for math also, and not, always stick to the books, and she'll make a meal. When we do cooking, and I did this with the boys, and we're doing this now with our daughter, she gets the measuring cups out, and she's doing her math, and she's also making lunch. Bethany's 9, and she can go into the kitchen, she can make a recipe, and she's learning how to put a recipe together, because when you look at the ingredients, you have to know how to read the recipe to know what goes first, and so that takes a lot of thinking skills and concentration, and so it's more than just math. You get a lot of subjects in that one thing that you're doing.
So here she's not gotten to fractions yet in her book work, but in the kitchen she's learned fractions, and she can do them very well. She knows, that a quarter cup is half of half a cup, and she knows that if you double it and it's a third cup, now you got to have 2/3 cup. And she's done quite well with fractions. And it's practical. It makes sense to her because there's something concrete that she understands how these concepts apply.
Following a recipe and learning how not just to read the ingredients, but learning when to put what in, and just learning different.
Following
directions and learning to concentrate. I can ask her to make lunch, and she can make a whole meal, and she enjoys it. She can put it on the table. So she's preparing for her own home, and she's being educated at the same time.
Lunch is ready.
Oh, sounds good. Let's go eat.
Yep.
Thank you, Beth. It's good.
Math in the kitchen, cooking, figuring out if we're doubling a recipe, and it uses a tablespoon or half a tablespoon, and you've got to do all these calculations. We'll let the kids do it as much as possible to get that sort of added up. And even when we go shopping now, I'll say to Emma or Lauren or Sophie, go and get me the margarine that's the cheapest per ounce. You can put schooling into everything, figuring out how many miles per gallon we get on our car, which I do just to see how it's doing, why that means something.
When you homeschool, it's really neat how all the opportunities that you get that most other kids don't get, the field trips that weren't for a day or two. We've had field trips that lasted a week or two, and having animals, the time I've gotten to spend around the house working in the garden, learning to sew and cook and things like that. Not just the curricular academic activities like math and science and things. It doesn't take up all my time. School doesn't take up all my time. Sometimes it feels like it does, but it doesn't take up all my time compared to those that have to be in high school or academy. I still have time to do other things, which is really, really special. We like to go canoeing together. My dad and I are building a cedar strip canoe, so that's been another project that we really like to do together.
She goes down to the shop sometimes, and Brad's teaching her how to sand and how to build things. And Brad and Lizzie have been making a canoe, a
cedar strip canoe.
Cedar strip.
So that's been a fun experience to do together. And of course, then we're going to use it in our next camping trip. when Lizzie was smaller, Becky went through a lot of cooking, just cooking with Lizzie, showing how those things are done, house cleaning and that kind of stuff. Those are all just practical skills that we all need. And that's just a great opportunity to teach and learn those things in home, so that, you know, when you have a home of your own, or when something happens, like Becky said, when she had to be gone, Lizzie could take over those things and really work quite efficiently at getting those things done.
I wanted my kids to be able to learn to do a lot of things that I had never learned how to do. You know, just normal everyday tasks. When we got married, I mean, I had no clue how to cook. And my mom was a really good cook, and but I just had never learned that. And so just everyday basic things that you're going to use in life just as much as your academics. And having them at home allows that time to be able to learn all those other things. And we very intentionally try to incorporate all of that into our school.
These other things are beneficial to learning because they develop thinking skills, creativity in ways that you may not get in an artificial school environment.
When you learn in the real life, like when you take apart, Isaac took apart the four-wheeler, all the parts, and after he didn't know where he put the screws, the bolts, and then we had a hard time, but he learned that we have to be careful what we take it off, we have to put back. That is a real life, and that make you learn much more than just sit down.
When we recently worked on the springs and axles of our trailer, the boys were right there with me every step of the way, and you learn critical thinking. You learn about how things can go back together, how it should have been in the first place. All of that experiential learning is very valuable for the thinking process. And you don't get that without actually doing things as a family or around the home.
One of the things that I find in my teaching experience is that teaching in the moment is really, really important. When they're asking questions, I'll sometimes just divert off the topic to help them in that moment to get that aha moment for right then. And I found that homeschooling gives you tons of those opportunities, because the child is maybe working with you in the garden and they have a question about something. And it's like, perfect. Now I can either relate it to gardening and what we're doing, or I can answer it right there in the moment, where maybe they have a burning question about something that's completely off the topic of even what we're doing with them at homeschooling. And we'll get diverted off and be able to talk about that. So I think that in the moment learning is a huge thing for the child to be able to learn what they're trying to learn. And rather than having the question and then just going off and saying, well, I really didn't get answered, and then they don't think about that question for a long time.
We do a lot of just living life together. We do dishes, we work in the garden, we play, we run around outside, and we're learning constantly. We're learning character qualities like perseverance, diligence, orderliness, helpfulness. We're learning, science when we're outside in the garden examining bugs and, digging holes. We're learning, language as we just talk, and our firstborn Levi is a big talker, so we talk all day long, and we learn together as we just live life.
But even beyond that, like chores, how well do they do their job? If they're supposed to sweep, did they sweep well? And if they didn't, say, okay, do it again. And do it again until it's right. Because that's part of that character development. It's not necessarily academics, but it's part of that training, going into the room and seeing how bad it is, and how much help do they need to sort of spur them on to keep it clean, and why would you bother keeping it clean? What's the benefit, and how much nicer it is when it's clean. So all those different parts of quote, education and learning as part of our daily life.
In day-to-day life, that's when kids are going to pick up the faith. It's not just by taking them to church, right? If we look to the school or to the church to take the lead in spiritual training, it's not going to happen. That's what the research has shown. But if you're living life with Jesus yourself, the most important thing in raising spiritually strong young adults is being a spiritually strong adult, is walking with the Lord, being completely dependent on Him, moment by moment, day by day.
We've got to seek the Lord in our own lives and demonstrate that.
In being spiritually strong yourself, you can model that to your children. You know, when something goes wrong in your life, you can show them, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. We're taking this to the Lord, and hopefully they can learn from you, from mentorship.
Our parents modeling spiritual character attributes is a major contribution to this.
I believe it's our example. If we are walking close to the Lord, the children are going to learn that that's the best way.
Our children seeing that God is real to us, I think is also a huge thing, so that so God becomes real to them. Seeing when we might be in need, and on our knees asking for the Lord for help, and then seeing how the Lord provides is something that's going to always be with them.
Seeing how He answers their prayers, seeing how we go to Him when we have a problem, or we call upon Him in need.
And so when the kids start to see that, they start to be interested in it. Oh, Dad's praying. Well, now I'm interested in prayer, right?
We try to encourage spirituality in our children as they're growing up, starting with teaching them to have daily devotions, you know, from very early age.
One of the most important things is that you need to establish a consistent family worship routine.
Raising a young person to give their heart to the Lord, to have a spiritual walk, you know, I think a huge part of that is the time that you spend in family worship. That time you are in the Word of God and you talk through the things that you're praying about.
To develop spiritual strength, it requires daily prayer, daily study of the Word. Family worship is an important part of that.
Family devotions are an important part. Each morning the kids get up and they do their own devotions first of all. We eat breakfast and we have family devotions. We work on scripture memorization. We sing hymns together as a family. So it's a big part of our day.
So we spend every morning and every evening some time, and sometimes it's just mom with the children if I'm not available, but whenever possible, all of us gathering around the Word of God, singing a little, praying a little, reading a little, discussing a little, having object lessons like the rock from the garden about God taking the stony heart away or whatever, trying to find ways that really connect with the kid, but then not just leaving that at worship and not just having the example in our life, but also talking about these commands as you rise up, as you sit down, as you walk along the way. This is what the Lord has asked us to do. I was just reading in the Psalms, and I don't remember the Psalm number, 80-something, and it says that was a law of God. God's law requires of us that we talk with our children about God's law and commands.
My parents early started teaching me the Bible stories, and when I was just a baby or old enough to comprehend.
Encourage them to have their personal walk with God, you know, since they are small, to encourage them to have their devotion, their own devotion, have family worship. What they read, I think, makes a big influence in their minds as well. You know, we like to provide them books that tell the stories of people who worked for the Lord, who are missionaries, and there are so many interesting books, and I think this gives them the desire to do the same, because whatever we behold, right, we are changed.
Having examples worthy of imitation, it helps you develop characters like those with whom you behold.
You don't have to be a professional teacher to be able to educate your children.
You definitely don't need to be a professional educator. I mean, we don't have any professional skills in the way of education, which was really nice. When we first started doing this, there was a presentation at our church, and somebody, I don't remember who it was who came, and she talked about statistics to do with homeschooling. And they took people of every graduating level of school, like PhDs, all the way down to never finished high school. And they compared their children from homeschooling. And all of them, the children pretty much scored across the board in the top 10 percentile. So from an academics perspective, you don't need to.
I have friends that say, oh, I cannot homeschool because I don't have the education background, or I do have the educational background, and that was very hard for me because it was not the right way of doing it.
I can say as a professional educator that you do not need to be one in order to be able to train and educate your children properly, especially in these early years. I can tell you there's nothing, virtually nothing that I learned in my teacher training and my bachelor's degree in education that I've needed in order to do what I'm doing.
I remember when the children were small, and I'm always thinking, I can't wait till they grow a little older so I can teach them. And they grew a little older, and I'm thinking, well, maybe it will be later, because by now they're kind of learning by themselves, right? We are just learning together. And the teacher in me wanted to sit them down and teach, but I knew it was not the best way. So I had to hold myself back from the, teaching, formal, giving lectures. And really, it was the questioning, the curiosity, the learning together in something that we are researching that did it. So I've been both sides, and I would say that anybody can do it.
I suppose if your goal in teaching was to instruct your children in a certain set of facts and concepts and skills, probably it would be an advantage to have a degree. But like we've already said, our goal is not so much to teach them a certain set of facts, but to teach them how to learn. And doing that together is really the best way for that.
Part of the fun about homeschool is that the stuff that you can learn together and do together. It's a blessing not only to the child but to yourself too, and enriching your own experience in education.
Sometimes you think, oh, I don't know if I can do that. But if you dive in, it's just as much an experiment sometimes for you as a parent as it is for your children. You work together at it, and that makes it really rewarding, because you both have all of you have the sense that, hey, we did this. Even though you were kind of maybe tentative about doing it, saying, what do I know about, doing this or building that? But you just figure, you know what, if we make mistakes, we're all making them together. And it turns out the way it does, and if it's got a funny little corner on it, it's kind of something you remember and look back on and say, oh yeah, we built that, and it even still has that funny little corner.
You learn by doing, you learn by watching others, you learn by studying the Bible and asking, Lord, how would you have us raise these children? If you can do those things, then you can train and educate your children from the earliest ages. You don't need a degree. In fact, it might hinder more than it could help in a lot of ways. We grew up in sort of a, standard American lifestyle, and education having its proper place in the school, and that this is not to say anything negative about academic learning, but for us, we've had to expand our own understanding about what does it mean to learn new ways of doing things.
It's not moving school to home, because that's, that misses out on everything.
Well, homeschool is different in you're not just moving, that curriculum. I guess the first year we did kind of move, we had a set curriculum and we moved it to home. But after, I think it was the second year, in second grade, Becky started picking and choosing. As she saw Lizzie's need in a specific area, she would emphasize that area. And And that way you can, and that's a neat part about homeschooling, is you can adjust that to the child's need rather than just, you know, going through a set curriculum. Oh, we got to get through this year.
A lot of us start off doing homeschooling by doing school at home because that's how we know. I mean, that's really what most of us have had as our past experience. What you find out soon enough is you can cover that material so quickly, and you see, well, I saw how it affected my kids. You know, it was a shallow experience, and so I loved putting curriculum together and putting material together where it made school exciting for the kids.
I think that homeschooling was incredibly advantageous for lots of reasons, but particularly because my sisters and I are all very different learners, and my mom was able to cater to that through homeschooling. Like, I was very visual, I got to read everything, anything she put in front of me I was like, okay, I'm done. And I just love to read, but my sister Mackenzie really didn't like that way, and my mom had to be more creative with presenting material. And because we were homeschooled, she could do that. In a regular public school system, they generally present things in one way, and if you don't get it, too bad. So homeschooling was really fun in that way. We got to play with our curriculum and make it so that we enjoyed school.
In a classroom, and we have about 20 children, and you want all of them to be interested and to learn the same thing at the same time, the same speed. That's something insane. But we are so used to that we think that that's the way, that's normal.
You know, I'm not after normal kids. I'm praying for exceptional kids. And if I send them to a system that is designed to, you know, treat 30 kids the same throughout the day, my kids will normalize. And that's really what you're after. In fact, I've heard it, oh no, your kids won't be normal. And I say, praise the Lord, I'm looking for exceptional.
I think, yeah, homeschooling does take a different mindset, at least, and a different lifestyle. It's coming away from the norm, and we had to change our life in a big way. You know, Becky was running all the sales and design, and so we had to make quite an adjustment. You know, some people might have to make an adjustment because they're used to living off of 2 incomes, and they have to adjust to live off of 1 income. But you can make those adjustments. You know, it's, you know, I thought there's no way I could do everything in the shop and do all the sales and design, meet with the customers, oversee the production and everything. But the Lord provides. If you truly believe that this is what He's asking you to do, He's gonna show you how to accomplish that and the changes that you need to make. But the changes are good. You know, what a blessing it has been to have Becky more focused on Lizzie and her upbringing and her education, and to have her home with her. It's made our home just a wonderful place to be.
It seems, you know, everything in life that is advantages not always look that way at first. It may appear at first as a sacrifice, but at the end will show itself not to be a sacrifice, but the opposite, you know, enhances life.
For those moms who are used to working, it is an adjustment. It took me a year to disengage myself from the work. I loved what I did, and it was fulfilling. And coming and teaching your child who you have to keep on focus or whatever, it was like, you know, but I'm so successful at what I do. But I knew that the Lord wanted me to do that, so I stuck with it. After that first year, it got much easier.
To break free from that and say, we're going to do something radically different. It means actually parenting, educating, training, doing life with this child, and that's our job. That's our full-time gig. That is a radically different way of viewing things, because now all of a sudden, all the things I want to do and all the things I would rather do, those take a back seat because this child's soul is on the line. This child's character and his livelihood and his future. We're forming a little human being here by our actions or lack thereof, letting the media do it or the schools do it. And so to say, I'm really going to go all out on this, we're going to truly educate our children, that is a whole change in lifestyle.
It's a commitment. I think that the biggest factor when parents decide to homeschool is how much they really want to do it, you know, their reasons for committing to doing that, as to how effective it ends up being.
I believe we have to love them. That's the thing that you need the most, because you have to be patient, you have to be kind and constant, day after day, day after day. Usually we pay professional to be patient with our children and teach basic things of life that we are not patient enough to teach them.
That's another blessing of homeschool. It brings us closer to God, because we don't want to be a failure, and we don't want our kids to be a failure. And yeah, I agree with love. You know, love, it was the base of creation, it was the base of redemption, and it's the base of true education as well. The book Education says that.
Sometimes I felt, you know, it is difficult with little children, and I have the joy, but you know, there is the housework that you have to do and all the things, and sometimes you want some time to yourself. And I would see the school bus passing right in front of my house, and I'm thinking, all the other mothers are at home just sipping tea or juice, and I'm here, you know, I don't have a little bit of time. But then I thought, well, these children will come back home, and when they come, the mothers will have to undo lots of what they have learned in school. So I thought, well, it's just a brief moment that you have those feelings, and then you come to reality and say, no, I have the best.
My favorite part about homeschooling, there are many.
My favorite part of homeschooling is definitely the flexibility.
And my favorite part about homeschooling is the flexibility.
I love the flexibility it gives.
Flexibility is one word that really has a lot to do with homeschooling.
Homeschooling gives you a lot more flexibility.
Not only in activities, but in the curriculum.
The ability to make my own schedule for school, the ability to travel while doing school, the ability to meet people and say, you know, I'm doing all of these things because I can be homeschooled, and so it's flexible.
We can go places during school months where we couldn't go if they were in school.
Yeah, it's being able to customize the learning experience.
I job shadowed in a hospital, or at least a couple of local hospitals. Because I was homeschooled, I could take time out and just go follow a nurse, and it was school.
You get to pursue things that you couldn't pursue otherwise.
We can customize it just for them, and they can end up going down a path that they particularly enjoy.
I really enjoy being able to pick my own, pick topics that I enjoy studying and study those, spend time on the things I really enjoy.
Not just school on a transcript, but it was school, good learning experiences. It helped prepare me for life, it helped me prepare me for my job, and I could do that because I didn't have to go to a setting where I was in class and doing exactly what the teacher told me. I was doing what helped prepare me for life.
I think my favorite thing about homeschooling is probably that I can do my school outside some of the year, and I can kind of do my own order of stuff that I want to do.
Seeing the kids struggle with something, but then working together with them, and then finding something that clicks and then makes that learning experience work, and then they're like, wow, you know, I learned it, or I figured it out.
I think it has to be the process by which I've learned to learn, which is the inquisitive, the empirical, the trying to find out on your own.
My favorite part about homeschooling is I get to be home with my mom.
The one-on-one interaction that I have with my mom, which she's my teacher, and I don't have 20 other students trying to get her time too. No, it's whenever I need her, she's right there for me.
I really like being able to be home with my mom.
The thing that I like about homeschooling, we've really kind of hit on it already, is the fact that you're together as a family. And you know, some people may think, I don't want to be together with as a family that much. But we've enjoyed it. I mean, it's not been without its trials and difficulties, but everything we do pretty much is together.
That special time that we can spend together. Our morning worship, I'm a little bit flexible in my schedule, so I can come and have worship with them in the morning, have breakfast with them in the morning. And, when you're having to run always and get to someplace on time, that cuts out a lot of that time, special time that you can spend as a family together. I appreciate that.
I think the favorite part of homeschooling that I've enjoyed is being a part of their lives as they go through the educational process. I've always enjoyed learning, I've always enjoyed teaching, and it's a joy when you can put that together with your own children.
I have really enjoyed all the things we've gotten to do, all the activities we've gotten to do, places we've gotten to go, and be together as a family. The activities even that we do here at home, it's been fun and engaging. Because if she wasn't here, if she was in school, I would be working, and Brad would be working to try to keep her there in school. And this way we have a more natural life, a more calm, yeah.
My favorite part about homeschooling is just being able to be home with the girls and spending time with each other, bonding with each other. Sometimes they do go one day a week to a co-op, and I find on those days when they're gone, I think, where are my little friends? So we're a very close family, and we enjoy spending time together.
To be able to stay at home with my children and have them there and watch them to grow and develop.
I like seeing them growing and developing and becoming the people that God is intending them to be.
Just as they get older and they mature, and you just see their interests develop and their character growth.
Being able to spend the day with them and see how they are learning and how they are growing. We all know, and we heard many times that kids grow so fast and we don't know what happened. I heard other parents say, no, we blink and they grew up. And I think it's a blessing, to be able to look back and say, I've been there every day. It wasn't like that, it was gradually. And praise the Lord, He gave us the chance to be there with them.
Being with the kids, I have the honor and privilege of seeing them learn, and I don't think that is anything more beautiful.
The bonding that happens between you and your kids when you're studying and learning together is something you'll treasure for the rest of your life. It's memories you create between you and your kids that are positive, and it brings you closer.
I was very touched because my daughter is very social, but she wrote me more than one time. She says, Mama, you are my best friend. And I don't think there is anything that a parent can hear better than that, because that's what happens, our hearts are bonded together. They feel more open. They open up their hearts, and in that way, we can guide them, in the directions that I don't even know if they would come to us if it wasn't homeschooling. So I feel very thankful for this gift from the Lord.
The relationship that we have with our kids, I think, is there because we invested in being with them, and that the big part of it is homeschooling. You spend that time together, and you create memories together, and you bond together.
I want them to be the best that they can be, and so investing in them in this way is the best way to educate your kids. And whether you have the education to do it, you just have to want to do it. Today, you have all the resources you could possibly need to homeschool your kids.
Plus, I think God blesses that effort. It's so important to have a Christ-like character, and
you have the opportunity to model that for your kids 24/7 when you're with them. And it's a powerful influence. It really is. I'm just really grateful that I had the opportunity to homeschool our kids and that God has blessed it more than I could imagine, and that the kids are very thankful too that they were brought up that way and had the opportunities that they had because we made that decision.
There's really no one who understands my children better than us. We've been with them all of their lives, and we understand their peculiar characteristics.
The best teacher for the child is their own parent, because they know the child better than a teacher who's only with them so many hours a day. And the parent knows the weaknesses and the strengths of the child.
The parent is really the best teacher. And there's a number of reasons the parent's the best teacher. They know their children the best. They have the most care for the child. I mean, there's really good teachers who really care for children, and praise the Lord for those. But the parent, nobody has the same interest in a child that the parent does, if it's a normal, loving family setting.
You know, nobody loves your child like you do. Nobody understands them and is around them as much as you are. How could anybody do a better job than you can do for them?
If a mom were to come to me and communicate that she felt insecure about being a homeschool mom, that she couldn't do it, that she just didn't have what it took, I would say join the club. Neither do I. But I have a faith in a God who is right beside me, who will give me everything I need to do my job well.
We believe that God's callings are enablings. So what God has asked us to do, He will not leave you out to dry. He will do in your life what you cannot do. And so it's when I realize my weakness, actually, that the best things are going to happen in my family, because it's in my weakness that His strength is made perfect.
You may not know everything to start with, but the teachers who are teaching your kids in the classroom also don't know everything either. You know, it's a process, and it may be challenging, but very worth it.
To be able to stay at home with my children and have them there and watch them to grow and develop is worth giving up all the temporal things that we can't have. And there's, we're blessed. We feel like we have what we need. We don't always have what we want, but it's worth it. And I know I'll never regret it. I'll always be thankful and grateful that I could homeschool.
It's worth persevering, worth putting your everything into it when the going seems really hard, and to keep going, and it's worth it in the end.
What I would say to a mom that feels insecure, not good enough, none of us are. I felt insecure. I felt that we all feel that. So don't let that stop you. Just pray, look, around, and just relax with your child.
If any mom, no matter what her degree of education, no matter where she's coming from, if she depends completely on God and asks daily for His help, then she'll get it. He's ready to offer that to her.
I'll tell the mothers to claim God's promise, use the Bible, and say, no, tell them, Lord, in Thy hands I commend my spirit. And what Isaac mentioned before, that's my favorite about Mary, the mother of Jesus. She was considered ignorant in the world's eyes. She wasn't educated, she wasn't experienced, and she was good enough to teach the Son of God. So I think if it was enough to teach the Son of God, it should be enough for our children as well, to be taught by their parents or mother.
the question that an earnest parent is going to ask is, what's the most important thing for a child to learn, a young person to learn? And as Christians, we believe that the most important thing we can learn is to know Christ and to develop character that's in harmony with Christ and the principles of God's Word. And I really think that everything else is secondary to that, from an educational standpoint, or anything else in life for that matter. But, you know, in an educational setting, I really believe that character growth is the most important thing.
As far as education goes, what do you as a parent want them, or what's your idea of what education is? What's the outcome do you want? What kind of an outcome? And I've always, through the years, I heard this statement, probably a long time ago, but it's kind of always stuck. When you have an outcome, you want an outcome, what are you doing to get there? So you always look at the end view in mind. What kind of an end view do you want? Start working on it back here when they're little, because those character traits that need to be changed, those ideas that need to be modified or whatever, they need to start when they're young. And then when you get to the end, you'll have what you desired as an outcome. But education as an outcome, what do you want from your child? Do you want them to be a professional? Do you want them to be a well-rounded? Do you want them to work for the Lord? What are you going to do when they're little to give them that goal, that desire? Expose them to those things.
We are growing them. We are raising them to give fruits, fruits for the society, for the community, to praise the name of the Lord and to bless everybody around with whatever they do, be it music, work, their voice. We are missionaries. We are preparing for another place that will be much better.
The standard that we have is not the world's standard. It's higher than the world's standard. It's not just to fill our children with information, but it's to prepare their heart for eternity. And that surpasses any task and aim that the regular education would contribute to.
We are supposed to be the head and not the tail. And if we develop a child that can think, and think well, and think clearly, they will be the head, no matter what. And they will be not followers, but they will be leaders, and leaders in the right direction.
This world really needs young people that are different than young people in the world. They need to see something different, because we don't want to make this world our home. Some people do. Some people think this world's going to go on forever and things are going to get better. But as Christians, we know that's not the case. We're looking for a different home, a heavenly home. But between here and there are some tremendous things that need to happen in this world. And it's going to take men and women with character that is rarely seen in history. And it's going to take a concentration of people, young people, that I don't think has ever been on this world since sin entered this world. I think that's what it's going to take to finish the job that God has given us to do, to take this gospel to the whole world. Going to the parable that Jesus gave us of the talents. We tend to think of talents as abilities, and they are. But talent was money, it was currency in Bible times. That's what Jesus was talking about. It's things that you have that are of value. And if you have a child, you've got 10 talents. So what are you going to do with it? I think we need to ask ourselves that question. If we want to hear God say, "Well done, good and faithful servant," there's going to be hard choices that need to be made. And we tend to focus on the temporal choices. And there are those hard choices that need to be made temporally, as far as where you're going to live, how you're going to live, how you're going to order your life. But it really boils down to the hard choices that we need to make between my soul and my God. And if we're willing to make those choices day by day and give ourselves to God, then we can hear that well done, because our children will be spiritually strong children. They'll be that army of young people that can finish the work on this world and usher in the new world